times when there were two popes and it didn't work out very well. How many of you feel like in your life, and don't raise your hand, but just think about it, how many of you feel like at times you have multiple bosses in your life? And I said don't raise your hand, Randy, but thank you, and the rest of you don't listen. If you're visiting, we are a slow group. We hope you fit in.
Who is that you?
How do you feel like you have multiple bosses in your life, between your boss and your job, and maybe you do have two bosses. I know what that feels like. Maybe in your job you've got, or in your life, then you've got the expectations of your family. Your spouse has definite expectations about your life and what's going on. Your friends, your school, the people in your neighborhood, the CCNRs. They don't like dandelions. I found that out a couple times. And you feel pulled in a lot of different directions because it feels like everybody wants a little bit different piece of you, and sometimes it gets very difficult to figure out what exactly am I supposed to be doing. And on the heels of that, starts to come a question that says, why am I here? Why am I here? What's my purpose? Yes, I know I get to go to job and work and go through the motions, but why am I here? What's my place? If you have your Bibles, open up the book of Matthew. Matthew is the first book in the New Testament, which is not in the middle of the Bible at all. The Bible is divided into the Old and New Testaments. The New Testament being the stories of Jesus and the early church. You're basically going to hit the middle of the Bible at Psalms. You're going to keep moving through there, get into some interesting sounding books like Zephaniah, and then you'll end up in Matthew, which is the first book in the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Even in Matthew 28. The disciples, this is the last chapter of the book of Matthew. The disciples have had one of those complete identity crisis moments. They've been following Jesus, and then suddenly Jesus was arrested and killed, and they're hitting the low part of their life, going, why are we here? What are we doing? This whole thing that we thought we had figured out is gone. And then Jesus is resurrected 3 days later, and they're now on the top of the world, and they're floating all over. And this is several days later, about 40 days later, that the story that we're about ready to read takes place. Matthew chapter 28, starting in verse 16. Then the 11 disciples left for Galilee. And in that phrase right there, you sense a little bit, you can capture just a little bit of the emotional content that's going on here. The 11 disciples. How many disciples were there? 12. Some of you are Bible scholars. Okay. There's 12 disciples. There's one missing. Why is there one missing? Because Judas betrayed Christ. Went to the religious leaders, the political religious leaders, and said, hey, you want him? I'll betray him. I'll give him to you. Give me some money. They give him 30 pieces of silver, the price of a slave. They take him. Judas takes him to him. They arrest him. He's taken and killed. All right? Judas watches what happens. Jesus is arrested. Judas thinks, I think in my mind, Judas thought, hey, this is a great idea. And then what's going to happen is Jesus is going to set himself free, and he'll end up being king, and this will be a great thing because Jesus is a little bit slow, and he needs to hurry up on his timetable and get this thing going because he needs to be king. Have you ever had those thoughts like, man, God is really slow. He really should hurry up already. I don't know if you've ever, maybe it's just me. And so, when he sees that Jesus apparently is not easily manipulated and doesn't set himself free, he goes out to commit suicide. Now, if you've been through death, you know how tragic and emotionally heartrending death is to have a loved one die. If you've been through suicide, you know how much deeper that pain is. If you've been through suicide of someone that you're close to, and you got to understand that for the disciples, Judas was like the best disciple. He's the one that they wanted to be on. He's really the only one who had skills. He was the one who actually knew how to dress, looked sharp, had management potential. Like, we need to have him on the team for the new kingdom kind of guy. And he's a part of them. So not only are they lost of a friend, a close compatriot, someone they've spent hours with, but also a key part of the plan for the new kingdom. I mean, the whole thing has come devastating down. So when the 11 disciples left Galilee, that phrase is saying something really powerful because they're missing someone. There's an emptiness in that group that they're still processing those emotions. And if you've gone through grief, let me tell you, grief makes no appointments. It shows up when it wants to. You feel like everyone looks at you, or you feel like everyone's looking at you saying, you need to hurry up and move on. I'm like, shut up! So they've gone through so much emotional whiplash. They're floundering. Where do we go now? What do we do now? I mean, Jesus is now resurrected from the dead. Well, what does this mean? Where are we going? What's the plan? And at the same time, the interpersonal dynamics of loss has got Peter, who betrayed him, has been reinstated. They're emotionally in upheaval. It's only been about a month. The 11 disciples left for Galilee, going to the mountain where Jesus had told them to. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some of them doubted. Now, what does that mean? When they saw him, they worshipped him. Does that mean like, Peter got back to the drum set, and John grabbed a guitar? Lord, I lift your name on high. No. That's not a praise song anyway. We don't like that. No. It's just burned out for some, that's all. Now what is this? They're sitting there going, wow. Wow. They're seeing a guy that they watched be spiked to a tree, who they watched die, talking to them on the top of a mountain. If that doesn't have a certain level of wow factor, you may need a pulse. In the middle, in the midst of confusion, frustration, anxiety, and being pulled in multiple directions, what we need more than anything else is to see a guy who's been dead and come back to life. I don't care what the problem is that you thought about when Chris was talking about problems. I don't care what the challenge is in your life, the pain in your life, the hurt in your life, the relationship that's destroyed, the finances that are in upheaval, the whatever it might be, the career that seems to not be going anywhere. What you need more than anything else right now today is to see Jesus, who is alive, standing in front of you going, yeah, and I beat that. Okay? You need to see Jesus, because when they do that, they're going, wow.